In this video, we're going to look at some tips that I can give you to make your DAX codes a lot more readable. We're going to look at some of the basic tips that you should be doing, as well as some that I incorporate in my day-to-day development. All of that and more, so without further ado, let's get started. Hi, my name is Fernan, and welcome to the Solutions Abroad YouTube channel, where we cover tips, tricks, and best practices when working with Power BI. I upload new videos every week, so make sure you hit that subscribe button and the bell icon to get notified when a new one is out. Writing readable DAX code is a critical skill to develop, especially if you're looking to work with semantic models. Keeping a consistent and easy to read DAX code makes it easy, not just for you, but for other developers to maintain and manage your code. And I've personally been guilty of this in the past, writing code simply for the sake of its functionality. And it always backfired on me many months down the line when I had to revisit the same code to make some updates, only to find that this code is something that is actually not readable even for me to understand what I was trying to do with it. So today I'm going to show you some of the basic tips that you should keep in mind when you're writing your DAX code. So let's have a look at it using this report that I prepared for you today. It's the typical Northwind datasets that we always look at. And I've already created the data model for you to not worry about it. And the main focus of this report is to look at year-on-year sales. So in this table, I'm showing a list of the different years that we have where we have sales. We have a measure here that we've created called sales, which is simply just a calculation of the total sales for that year by multiplying unit price against quantity. And then we also have another measure here, year-on-year sales, which calculates the percentage change between year to year. So for example, here you can see that there is a negative 29% year-on-year sales in 1998. So what it's saying is that the total sales has decreased by 29% from 1997 to 1998. And this kind of calculation is actually something that I covered in a separate video. So if you want to learn more about, the concept of what it is and what we're doing, go check out that video. So for now, we're going to do is we're going to go to that measure that I've created. And as you can see, using the visual here that we have created is kind of simple to understand what this measure is meant to be doing. However, under the hood, as you can see, we don't have, or we have a lack thereof, formatting in this measure. So without any formatting, your DAX code can look pretty complicated. Like here, for example, and one of the easiest ways that you can make this a lot more readable is by adding some indentations and line breaks. So you can add your line breaks by hitting Shift Enter, which will give you a new line of code. And by segregating your code like this, it makes it a little bit easier for your users to read each line of code that you have in this DAX calculation. However, the easiest way that you can actually fix this or add those indentations and line breaks is by using some sort of DAX formatter. There are a few to choose from, but the one that you can use out of the box with Power BI Desktop is the built-in DAX formatter from the DAX query view. So if we go to the DAX query view here, and let's go to our measure that we want to format, we'll go here, right-click, Quick Queries, Define and Evaluate. So what it will do is it will create a measure here where we can define our measure. And then at the top here, you can see there is an option for you to format query. If you hit Format Query and hit Update Model with Changes, what it will do is it will actually create those indentations and line breaks for you, and it will also save it on your measure. So now if you go back to your report view and go back to that measure, as you can see, it's already created those formatting things for us, which again, like by itself, it already makes it a lot more readable than before. Other than that, there are a few other options that you can use. One of them that I used to use frequently before the format query option was available is the DAX formatter by SQL BI. So I used to use this because it has some options for you to apply in terms of what rules you set for your DAX queries. So things like spacings or what kind of separators to use. And I believe there's also an option for you to use in the tabular editor. So for now, actually, especially if I am working with, DAX measures, I typically keep them short anyway, so I know what indentations and line breaks I need. However, if you do come in contact with, DAX measures in the future where it doesn't have a very good formatting kind of style, you can use the DAX formatters to fix it for you. So let's have a look at this calculation that we have indented right now. As we're looking at it, it's still not very obvious what it's doing. It's actually doing a few different things. But if you encounter any calculations that seem to be complicated or creating or doing multiple things at the same time, the best tip that I can give you is to break them down into variables. So variables is a concept that I actually covered in a separate video already, but think of variables as containers of data in which you can call and reuse at a later time. So in this scenario that we're looking at, for example, we notice if you look at it a little bit longer, you'll notice that there is an if statement in here that is repeated twice in the same code that we can actually put and simplify in a variable. So we can break this down by first defining what this does. So what we're going to do is we're going to copy it. And we're going to start, first of all, by defining that variable. We're going to call this one previous year sales, like this. And then we're going to define our if statement like this. It's going to reduce that indentation. And then after our variable is defined, we simply start with a return, which is the output value of our measure. But you can have multiple variables than just one. So now that we have done that, what we actually can do now is instead of defining that if statement again and again here, we can actually just replace that with the variable. So py sales here, and then here as well. So we can do py sales. And if you hit enter, you'll notice that nothing changed here. It still does the same thing, but now it's a lot more clear what this measure is doing. What it's doing is that it's dividing the total sales for the current year minus the previous year's sales, and then dividing that by previous year's sales to get the percentage year on year. So breaking your calculations down into variables as steps may not always lead to the most efficient way to write your calculations. However, for me, it's almost always negligible in terms of performance, to the point that I would prefer to have a more readable DAX code than a performance and not readable one. Now let's talk about naming conventions. There isn't really a strict rule regarding to how you name your variables, your functions and measures. However, what is important is you keep and stay consistent across all of your reports. So some of my naming conventions, for example, as you noticed already, when I start my variables, I always start it with an underscore. And that's just because I used to work with SQL before, but having it start with an underscore makes it easy for me to distinguish what my variables are with IntelliSense as I write my DAX queries. Variables, unlike tables, columns, and measures, can't have spaces. So in those kind of scenarios, you'll see me do camel casing, where you will have every single word in my names to have a capitalized first letter except the first word, just to keep that consistent style. With my naming conventions as well, I actually usually prefer human readable names that describe what the actual measure is doing. So for example, here, year-on-year sales is actually not that descriptive. If you look at it as someone who is coming in and using this data model. So actually what this is a percentage year on year. So what I would do in this case, I'm going to start with the percentage here. I'm going to call it year on year change. So it's a lot more verbose, but it gives a clear description of what this measure is doing. The other thing that you might have noticed is with measures specifically, I tend to put what that measure is returning by prefixing it with either, in this case, the return is a percentage, but if it returns a value, a fixed decimal value, I will put a pound sign or a dollar sign. And that's just because the data model on the right-hand side is always sorting alphabetically, and it's easier for me to distinguish and, have it automatically sorting with my measures if it's prefixed this way. It also makes it easy for me to search for them. So for example, if I need to search for, any measures that is calculating a percentage, all I have to do is type percentage here, and it will always show me measures that return a percentage value. So it's a really handy naming convention that I follow myself personally. So if you find that adding your formatting or, adding variables to break down your steps still leave you with a complex DAX calculation, another thing that you can employ is use comments. So comments are basically parts of your DAX script that is not evaluated. So it's simply just notes for other developers to check. And I only write comments specifically for any complex part of my DAX calculations to describe what they actually do. But when it comes to describing what the measures actually do and what it returns, I use the description bit in my measures properties. This makes it easier for basically documentation purposes. But if we look at inline comments, for example, here, if we want to describe what this does, you start your comments by writing / like this twice, and this is a comment. You'll notice that it is colored green. It just signifies that it is a comment. So you can do it like this if it's just one line, or if it's multiple line, you can actually do / with a star sign, and anything in between like this will be a comment. And that's really it for this video. I hope it wasn't too basic and it has given you some ideas on how you can make your DAX measures and calculations a lot more readable. There are other tips that you can use to stay organized with your semantic models, measures, and columns. So if you want to learn more about those other tips, I'll leave a link somewhere in this video for you to check out. Thanks for watching. As usual, give this video a like if you found it useful. Give it a dislike if you didn't, so to do better for next time. Ask your questions in the comment section box below so I can help you and you can help others. If you like this video, we have a Patreon page where you can support the channel and get exclusive perks like early access, demo files, and credits at the end of these videos. Thanks again for watching and see you in the next one. Bye-bye.